Maybe the audience actually really connects with the people's feelings.
It was very insightful.
To have a show that is able to do that, I think is really impressive, so I enjoyed it.
I don't know what to think. Sometimes I think, should I just go back where I came from? Should I just leave all this behind? But this is my life. This is my life.
That this government will be instituting a policy of cuts to child welfare.
Virtual Migrants are a collective of artists who have come together from our various backgrounds, predominantly migrant backgrounds, and we engage with the issues of the day, looking particularly at issues of race, of injustice, and looking at the legacies of colonialism and the impacts of globalisation.
From where I started in 2009, we've done so much work and questioned ourselves continuously as to how can we have an impact, how can we make an impact with the type of work that we do. And I think Continental Chop Chop was literally an amalgamation of everything that we've done brought into one big performance.
What is the connection between the headline issues of the time, such as the large-scale migration that was taking place across Europe, with other issues that were of interest to people in the UK, such as austerity? Is there a way in which the two are being used to scapegoat certain kinds of people? Who are the people being scapegoated? And most particularly, how is this all connected with the seemingly unrelated issue of what is commonly called climate change?
Climate Justice Bulletin number 2. Each person in the UK is on average responsible for about 14 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions.
Chop, hurry, make that money, then. Chop, hurry, make that money, then. Crack, and judder, and round.
All gonna drown. I switched from foreign flights to trips to the Isle of Wight, but I still come back a lovely shade of brown.
We really combined art forms from looking at how the script would incorporate climate justice bulletins, so that's audio files, looking at then poetry, spoken word, combining that with music and sound textures and transmedia. And then we also had visual projections as well and refugee testimony.
The better way have is to prepare people to cope with the problem and say, look.
Drunken sailor early in the morning.
Fertilised by African blood.
Coming from Africa and coming from Zimbabwe, what is the situation right now in regards to rainfalls and things like that? And a lot of places within Africa are suffering a lot from drought, so meaning that people don't have any food, they can't even plough their fields because there is no rain. So that was kind of touching on a lot of subjects, but at the same time trying to create sort of an ambience or a starting place.
As part of the performance, it was really good to link with Nnimmo Bassey, who is a Nigerian poet and activist working on environmental justice issues, and he's been at the forefront of writing about and campaigning about the Ogoni, which is the community in Nigeria where Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 of his colleagues were executed. And the year of Continent Chop Chop marked 20 years since this event, and so it was great to have a key person who's seeking justice for that narrative involved in the production.
System of neocolonialism and neoliberalism. These systems have to be changed, and this is what climate change calls for.
And in terms of working with Nnimmo, it was a series of conversations over internet, over Skype, and then including his poetry within the performance. So we worked with a filmmaker of his choice in Nigeria, and he was able to film his poetry, and we were able to then include his performance.
We see open mouths, but we hear no screams. Tears don't flow when you are scarred. We stand in pools up to our knees. We thought it was oil, but it was blood.
We also explored quite deeply how you engage with audiences in such a way that they don't become too comfortable. In order to kind of try and keep people alert and keep people thinking throughout the performance. And again, we experimented with that in a number of ways, including the first half essentially being a whole series of false starts that deliberately played with various kinds of stereotypes of political or engaged, shall we call it, performance.
We're not doing polar bears. We said we're not going to do polar bears.
The song that we sang with Aidan, about the polar bears, and the discussion that Aidan and I have about polar bears. How I'm saying to him, well, actually, it's so stereotypical of just climate change, talking about polar bears, that sort of thing. And then we have this back and forth on whether we should do a song on polar bears or Inuit kids. It was funny, but at the same time, it's a serious issue.
Yeah, the transmedia element we introduced was a provocation for the audience to get them hopefully questioning how a plausible NGO could maybe take issues of migration and develop a charity. And so we were looking at issues of maybe the white saviour complex and the way that some organisations go ahead and do work on behalf of people, but not really recognising that they are people in their own right, and in this case migrants obviously have been really dehumanised. So there was a lot of elements there, and also we had the element of money in there, and how organisations such as ours do need funding, and is this ethical to have this as a sponsor?
We need your help to get people like Salima home and to help people in her country. Ethical People Movement, EPM, works within international law to make the movement of people safer and more humane, and to help people stay in their own countries if they want to.
What I noticed is when that film was being showed in the real, if you like, in the real performance space, people were checking online to see if the ethical people movement really existed, in inverted commas. And the proof of the existence, ironically enough, is that it was there on a website. So the virtual performance, if you like, validated the real performance. I think that's really interesting.
But at the same time, it was the questions that came out of that from the audience as well, because from that we started talking about where does that put us as a company, as Virtual Migrants or whatever, associating ourselves with a guy like that who wants people to go back, in a humane way, go back where they've come from in a humane way, that sort of thing.
One of the bits that stands out for me was the personal testimonies from myself, Aidan and Tracey. So I was talking about an experience with a right-wing person on public transport, and that conversation, and how we arrived at some similarities and commonalities between our stories. Aidan spoke about his education, being educated as a white racist through the white racist education system, and then Tracey was able to offer her experience as a migrant to the country, and the difficulties in filling out the citizenship. So really personal testimonies that we hoped convey some of the really complex issues, and that was a way into then talking about broader narratives and from across the world.
Within my testimony, I was talking about my journey as a person who wasn't born in England but was in the process of actually applying for my citizenship or my naturalisation, and that process and the things that I was going through, and the questions that I would have been asked by people or by immigration officials and that sort of thing. So just kind of giving a picture of what it's like to be in that moment, that process. Only recently, actually, as recent as July, I applied for naturalisation. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware, I had to confront my own sort of immigration situation that was happening at the time, and I had to talk about it. I had to, not just to my work colleagues, but to strangers, which was nerve-wracking.
The climate change movement is predominantly seen as a white, even middle-class movement, and so we wanted to look at narratives that are outside that and really engage with knowledges that exist that can help address climate change that are hidden, and connect with the people who are directly affected and who are actually, realising the solutions, possible solutions right now.
And the planet cannot be saved by one group. The saving does not belong to one people. So, no disrespect intended, but you do not get a cookie for good intentions. Somewhere in your periphery, there is a
marvellously brilliant way in which Zena Edwards, who was one of our commissioned artists, boiled it all down as a challenge to white climate activists in particular, who, to some extent, have kind of colonised the whole debate around what they call climate change. And she produced a short film that highlighted that in a very interesting way. And again, it was about finding this sweet point between challenging people, but also bringing them into the fold so that they feel something can be done.
People, immediately when you talk of climate change, people just completely shut down. Oh, I don't want to hear it. But I think the way we approached it, we made it easy. We made it fun, but at the same time, it was serious issues that were being discussed.
So the intention was always to link with community groups when we toured this performance, and that was a key part of the research and development.
And that produced, for me, some of the most interesting and exciting parts of the work that we did. So, for example, in Liverpool, where we performed, partnered with Collective Encounters, their sort of community theatre group came up with some extremely interesting performances around the topic of austerity. In Leeds, we had some young musicians who came forward and performed some beautiful songs.
In Leeds, we worked with the local No Borders group. They were able to present their latest developments and actions to the audience there, and invite people as well into the audience, and the workshops which we incorporated into the performance. In London, we had Voices at Shake, a youth arts campaigning group, and there one of the young people was able to perform a poem, but also to mention the actions that are ongoing against shutting down Yarl's Wood. And I think that this was a really key part, because that's one of the frontline struggles that is arriving out of migration.
We didn't sugarcoat it, I think. We said it as we wanted to say it.
The key to all of this is making connections, really.
The poems and people's experiences, and that very moving and touching. And I think the performance as a whole was very insightful.
But had some really interesting, reflective moments. Some, where it got really quite deep in the mood, kind of just prepared to go there and hang out with the atmosphere and not rush things. Really nice.
I was not disappointed in just how many themes were woven into the performance, and the personal experiences were quite gut-wrenching.
And the fact it was arranged in quite an intimate setting allowed maybe the audience to actually really connect with the people's feelings, almost seem more genuine and real than most of the climate change talks or anti-austerity talks I've gone to. It's very kind of you have to be subservient, yes, we're against this. It's just all us agreeing in a room. This seemed a lot more expressive.
It was lovely. I loved the music and then the poems together. I think they interacted really lovely. But yeah, I loved the performance. It all was smooth. It was very enjoyable to watch.
Because literally it nudged everybody in the audience was sitting up, because suddenly it was kicking off. And it really mirrored the type of conversations that happen about climate change, where nobody seems to agree on anything.
Because they do sit together, just normal everyday life and community, everyday creativity and huge global problems that we all face. So to have a show that is able to do that, I think is really impressive. So I enjoyed it enormously.
I enjoyed all the different uses of the media, especially the little handheld video recordings. I thought that was really good, and the way they changed the position on the stage. Sometimes it was in front of you, sometimes it was behind you. So I thought that was different.